The weekend part of Wild Card Weekend in the NFL is in the books. We have one game tonight. Let's talk about what we learned over the weekend, plus the latest on the NFL's coaching carousel. It's the Jake Asman Football Show, and it starts right now.
Oh, yeah. It's time for the Jake Asman Football Show. Brought to you by BetUS. Expert betting odds and fantasy stats. So let's get into some NFL football. Brought to you by our friends at BetUS. So get your questions ready. Here's your host, Jake Asman.
Happy Monday, everybody. Appreciate you spending time with us right here on the Jake Asman Football Show. If you're a football fan, we talk NFL at least twice a week on this channel. So click the like button and, more importantly, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We are presented by BetUS. I mentioned it, one game tonight. If you want to bet on the Rams and the Vikings, do so with BetUS. If you're a new customer, you'll receive a 150% sign-up bonus with your first deposit, and then enjoy a 125% bonus with your second and third deposits. Shout out to BetUS for being the best sports book and my go-to for any sport, not just the NFL, but college football, hockey, basketball, baseball, UFC, boxing, tennis. They have it all over at BetUS. Let's talk about Wild Card Weekend, and then we'll get into some news involving the coaching carousel. Of course, Mike Vrabel yesterday, not a big surprise, but he goes back to New England this time as their head coach, so I'll give you some thoughts on that. But we start with the game that kicked off the weekend, what I like to call the Texans Invitational, because if the Texans are in the playoffs, you know they're going to be in that 4:30 Eastern time slot as the first game of the weekend, and that's exactly what happened again this past Saturday, and the Chargers were a favorite. They didn't play like it. Texans beat the Chargers 32-12, and everyone's going to get on Justin Herbert, and rightfully so. He stunk. But it's not like C.J. Stroud was that great either. This was a masterclass of a defensive performance by the Houston Texans. The defense kept them in the game, then allowed Justin Herbert to basically self-destruct. And we just saw a Chargers team that doesn't beat themselves, really beat themselves. I mean, Justin Herbert, he's going to be hearing about this one for a long time. And you know what? Rightfully so. Justin Herbert has all this hype, all this hoopla around him. And I'm sorry. He stunk. He absolutely stunk in this game. Not a good look for Rex Ryan saying that, oh, the Texans are a bye week for the Chargers. That clearly motivated the Houston Texans, oh, by the way. But really, the storyline in this game is just how bad Herbert was. Justin Herbert threw more interceptions on Saturday than he had in the entire regular season. He threw 4 picks, only had 3 in the regular season. And look, the Chargers are kind of phony. They'll be better going forward when they add more talent. They clearly, to me, are headed in the right direction with Harbaugh. But the Chargers now finish the season with only 1 win against a team with a winning record at the time they played them. And that was the 7-seeded Broncos, who were a good team, but certainly not a great team in a watered-down AFC, where it's very top-heavy with the 3 top teams in Kansas City, Baltimore, and Buffalo. So I don't really think Houston's got a chance, to be honest with you, against Kansas City this week. But they're better than the Chargers, and they certainly proved that with that performance. Texans defense was awesome, but this was about Herbert being just bad. I mean, seriously. And look, Justin Herbert has all the physical traits and the talent and has the look of a franchise quarterback. But can we stop anointing Justin Herbert in that top 5 quarterback conversation? He's not. He's not. He's the AFC version of Dak Prescott until proven otherwise. Puts up the lofty numbers in the regular season, and come playoff time, hasn't proven it yet. In 2 playoff games in 5 years, Justin Herbert's team was a road favorite against an AFC South champion that nobody thought was any good. Remember a few years ago, it was Jacksonville, and they blew that huge lead? And then on Saturday, they're expected to win in Houston, and they didn't just lose, they got blown out. And in both games, especially this past game, Justin Herbert played awful. He played awful in the second half in that game against Jacksonville a few years ago. Everyone blamed Brandon Staley, which is fine. He's not a good coach. But now you have Jim Harbaugh, and that happened yesterday? Herbert's got to own his performance. He stunk. I don't want to hear about Justin Herbert in the top 5 until he proves it. You got to do it in the playoffs. And you got to have more success before we anoint you. And we've anointed Justin Herbert, and he's a good quarterback. He is not a great quarterback. And as far as the Texans go, they're going to need C.J. Stroud to play a heck of a lot better if they have any chance to go into Kansas City and pull off an upset. I think I already saw the opening line, by the way, at BetUS is Kansas City -8. Think about that. An 8-point favorite in the divisional round against a Texans team that won its division. What does that tell you? Tells you the betting markets don't think the Texans are that good. That this was more of a product of the Chargers chargering than the Texans being this team that has figured it out and they're ready to go out there and pull off an upset. The nightcap on Saturday was even worse. The final score was Ravens 28, Steelers 14. It never really felt like it was even that close of the game. It's 21-0 at halftime. Kirk Herbstreit is calling out the Steelers for a lack of energy, how they looked in that first half, where the fight was, and he's right. The Ravens dominated the line of scrimmage. Derrick Henry makes all the difference for the Ravens now. They don't need Lamar Jackson to be superhuman. They're going to need him to be better than he's been in the playoffs. But having Derrick Henry changes everything for Baltimore. And if they're going to go into Buffalo now and beat the Bills, they're going to need to rely heavily on Derrick Henry, and they're going to need to dominate the time of possession like what we saw Buffalo actually do to Denver in a game I'll get to coming up. But the Ravens dominated this game. There's really not much I can add other than they were a 9.5-point favorite, and they did what they were supposed to do. Now, I fully admit, I thought the Pittsburgh Steelers would play a competitive game. Division opponent. They beat them already in the regular season. Tomlin, I thought, would have the guys ready to go. I was wrong. I did not see this beatdown coming. I really thought this would be a competitive game, but you know what? If someone tells you who they are, believe them. The Steelers were not the same team down the stretch. They entered the playoffs on a 4-game losing streak. Offensively, they were inept down the stretch. I feel like there was a compelling argument to make that they should have went to Russell Wilson or benched Russell Wilson and went to Fields in this game, try and spark the team. Tomlin ultimately didn't do it, and now there's a lot of Steelers fans that want Mike Tomlin gone. Pittsburgh hasn't led in a game at any point since December 8th. I get it. The last 5 playoff games, the Pittsburgh Steelers have gone down in big-time fashion. 21-0, 28-0, 35-7, 28-0, 21-0. That's not a small sample size. It dates back to 2017. I get it. 8 years without a playoff win. They've been flat in these games. But I still think the grass ain't always greener on the other side. Mike Tomlin has not had a quarterback, and I think that's where it starts. Are there some things they got to change? Do they maybe got to make some coaching changes or run a more modernized scheme on both sides of the ball? Sure, but Mike Tomlin still wins games. And I just don't know if you're finding a better coach than Tomlin. I don't think the Steelers are going to fire him. I don't think they would trade him. I mean, the only way Mike Tomlin is not with the Steelers is if he doesn't want to coach. Maybe he wants a year off. He's burnt out. I don't know. But I think it's crazy to talk about firing him, but I do understand the frustration of the Steeler fan. But I still remain confused about the overall discourse on Tomlin. Pittsburgh doesn't have a real quarterback. And if you're going to play Lamar Jackson in the playoffs like they did this year, or the Bills like they did last year, or the Chiefs like they did the year before, you need a better quarterback option than Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. He hasn't had the quarterback, so it's easy to kill Tomlin, and he's not perfect, but I still think winning 10 games with that team, find me the coach that would have done better this year. So the Steelers are in a tough spot. The success that Tomlin always brings them in the regular season, never having a losing season in 18 years, is why they're kind of in NFL purgatory. They've never bottomed out to be picking high enough to maybe get one of the top quarterbacks. And because of that, they're kind of stuck. They're never going to be bad with Tomlin. But are they ever going to be good enough to go deep into the playoffs without a true quarterback? It doesn't feel like it. So that's kind of what it feels like from a Pittsburgh standpoint. But ultimately, and the Ravens did what they were supposed to do as a nearly 10-point favorite. And look, this could be the game of the year next Sunday. Last game of the divisional round, Ravens-Bills. Sign me up for that. Go Ravens. Can't stand the Bills for obvious reasons. Speaking of the Bills, felt like we were going to get a real game when Denver Goes right down the field. Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, 43-yard touchdown. And then that was it for the Denver offense. Bills put it on them. And this game was close. It was competitive, but then the Bills really pulled away and they never looked back. 31-7. It felt like Denver had a chance early, and then, well, Josh Allen was Josh Allen. James Cook dominated on the ground with 120 and a touchdown. I mean, you look at the time of possession disparity in this game. That was the story of the game. Denver never had long, sustained drives, and their defense just wore down. The time of possession in this game was about as lopsided as you'll see. 41 minutes and 43 seconds, Buffalo held the football compared to 18 minutes and 17 seconds for Denver. You just can't win that way on the road. If you're going to win on the road with a rookie quarterback, you got to have a running game. You got to move the chains. You got to keep Josh Allen on the sideline. Denver couldn't do any of that. So it's a really good year for Sean Payton and Bo Nix, getting that team to the playoffs, ending the second longest playoff drought in the NFL. But ultimately, the Bills are just better. And that's why they were nearly a 9-point favorite at home, and they handled business. Second game of the day yesterday, Eagles beat the Packers 22-10. I was wrong about this one. I thought Green Bay was primed to give a rusty Jalen Hurts a real game, right? Hurts hadn't played in a while, coming off the concussion. And then immediately that fumble set the tone for the Eagles. Packers fumble, give the Eagles an extra possession, and immediately Hurts makes them pay by throwing that touchdown with all day in the pocket. All day. He could have had a barbecue back there before he threw that first touchdown to Jahan Dotson. And then that was really it. I mean, Jordan Love and the Packers offensively, they stunk. They stunk. And the irony is the Packers defense played well, holding the Eagles to only 22 points, especially when 7 of the 22 came basically with a free touchdown on the opening fumble, setting up that possession. The irony is the Eagles did not play well offensively. So my feeling on Jalen Hurts being rusty was right. I just couldn't have predicted how bad Jordan Love would be, how bad LaFleur was from a game planning standpoint. By the way, the irony is when Aaron Rodgers was always the Packers quarterback, it was always the Packers defense that stunk. What's the average? 35 points per game allowed by the Packers defense under Aaron Rodgers in his career in playoff games? Well, yesterday, they held Philadelphia to 22 points. That should be enough. And let's be real. Philadelphia had the benefit of 3 Jordan Love interceptions and the fumble. I mean, that's the reason why the Eagles won this game. The turnovers. That was the difference in the game. You win the turnover battle 4-0, and you only win by 12 points. Philly didn't play well offensively. They were lucky to win this game. But Jordan Love was terrible. Let's call it for what it is. Jordan Love was terrible. And I'm not giving up on him. I'm not saying he's terrible. Obviously, it was still the right move for Green Bay to move on from Aaron Rodgers and start the Jordan Love era. But that was an awful performance by Green Bay. And they also have a ton of injuries at the wide receiver spot, so I'm sure that affected Love. But 3 interceptions is 3 interceptions. One of them was just horrendous to Slay in the end zone. That was as bad of a decision as you'll see by a quarterback in these playoffs. And look, the Eagles were not great yesterday offensively. Jalen Hurts was 13 of 21 for 131 yards. Saquon Barkley was held in check for the most part. You have A.J. Brown reading a book in between drives. Philly's got to play a lot better if they're going to go out there and beat either of the teams that are playing tonight, whether it's the Rams or it's Minnesota. I mean, they won this game more so because Green Bay played poorly than the Eagles playing well, was my feeling watching this one. But ultimately, that is a disappointing performance by Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. And they're in a tough division, right? They win, 11 games. A lot of times you win 11 games, that's good enough to be a division champion. Well, you got a 14 team in your own division that's not a division champion. So it's tough for Green Bay. They got to get healthy, but tough. Tough performance by the Green Bay Packers. The night game, the final game of Wild Card Weekend, as far as the weekend, right? Today's Wild Card Monday, so it's not technically the weekend, but you get the point, ended up being a classic, the best game. And this game completely changed last night when Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield, fumbled and gave the Commanders immediately another possession inside the 20-yard line after, for whatever reason, Dan Quinn, with his team down 4, decided to go for it on 4th and goal rather than just kick a field goal, a chip shot, and make it a 1-point game. Why are these coaches trying to be so smart and, we got to go for it, man? Have a feel for the game. You can't come up empty-handed there. Kick the field goal. Your defense is playing well. Get it back to your offense, and then you only need a field goal to win. And Dan Quinn got bailed out last night in a couple ways. Because after he goes for it and they don't get it, Baker Mayfield with the center quarterback exchange, fumbling the ball while trying to hand it off to the receiver on the end around, completely changed the tenor of the game. Then Washington goes down the field, short field to begin with. They score. They tie the game up, changes everything. And, the Bucs defenses couldn't get a stop late. And Jaden Daniels, joins a very small list of rookie quarterbacks to win a road playoff game. Shout out to Mark Sanchez. But that was the best game. And, that double doink, or not a double, or I guess it was a double doink, right? It was a old doink and it went in. You talk about karma changing for a franchise since they got rid of that disgusting pig owner, Daniel Snyder. That's what that was. That was karma in real time for every Commander fan out there. Every Washington Commie fan couldn't believe that doink went in for the walk-off field goal, giving Washington its first playoff win since 2006. First playoff win for Washington in nearly 7,000 days. New owner, new GM, new coach, new franchise quarterback. The karma completely changes, and then Zane Gonzalez can doink in a 37-yard game-winning field goal. You kidding me? You kidding me? Unbelievable. This is a tough one for Tampa. They had this game. That fumble by Baker was critical. And look, Washington, I think, is going to be a fascinating matchup for Detroit. You got two coaches that are aggressive in Quinn and Campbell. You got two quarterbacks who could sling it. We can't view Jaden Daniels right now through the prism of he's a rookie quarterback. He's not playing like one. That's all that matters. Not playing like a rookie. And that was some performance by Jaden last night and Washington. But the karma has changed with that doink. You saw it in real time. Dan Snyder owns the team. One that wouldn't be in the playoffs. But hypothetically, if he did, that doink does not go through the uprights. It bounces right out. Unreal. A thought on the game tonight before we talk about the coaching carousel. I like the Rams in this one tonight. This game, of course, in Arizona. It was supposed to be in Los Angeles, but due to the wildfires, they have already moved the game to Arizona. Obviously, sending my well wishes to everyone in that situation. Just horrific seeing the images and all that. But as far as the football game tonight, I think the Rams are the way to go. You give me the better coach, you give me the better quarterback, and I'm getting points. Rams are getting 2.5 points right now at BetUS. I'm taking LA. I think they're going to be, in a weird way, motivated by the wildfires, trying to feel like they're playing for the city. I think there's an emotional boost they get. They don't have a home field advantage anyway, if we're being completely honest. It's better than what the Chargers get in that same stadium, but it's not like Rams fans are going to be able to sell it out with their own. There'd be a ton of Vikings fans there anyway. I think it's almost beneficial for the Rams to be at a neutral site. And as far as Minnesota goes, look, Sam Darnold has been unreal this year, but last week was alarming. In a game they had to have to be the 1 seed, he looked jittery. He was inaccurate. He looked like New York Jets Sam Darnold. Seeing ghosts Sam Darnold. I just have questions about what version of Darnold we see tonight. He's going to have to prove it that he can do it in the playoffs. We'll find out. But I like the Rams here. They're rested. They're healthy. So we will see how it plays out. But you're going to give me the Rams getting points when I feel like I have the edge at coach and quarterback? I feel good about it. I have a Super Bowl champion coach and quarterback against a quarterback who looked like the moment was too big for him a week ago against Detroit, now in his first ever playoff game. Wouldn't surprise me if the Vikings won. They're a favorite for crying out loud. but there always is an underdog that wins wild card weekend. And I know Houston already won, but that really wasn't a true underdog, right? Like if you listen to the show, I told you I thought the Texans are going to win. So this to me is a true underdog pick. I like the Rams tonight. You want to bet on that game? Bet US. You could take my pick. You could fade my pick. You can make your own picks, parlays, prop bets, you name it. Bet US. All right. The latest on the coaching carousel. Mike Vrabel, shocking, I know, has been hired as the next head coach of the Patriots. And look, what the Patriots did running a sham interview process should be discussed more by national pundits with way bigger platforms than what I have here. But what a joke. What a joke. And of course, all these other NFL owners a year ago were too stupid to hire Mike Vrabel, who was obviously an outstanding coach, who never should have been fired by Tennessee in the first place. So then the Patriots can right their wrong of hiring Gerard Mayo, who was a terrible coach, way in over his head, and then immediately hire Vrabel this go-around. It's been 25 years since the Patriots ran a real coaching search, by the way. What a sham. They bring in Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich on the same day to circumvent the Rooney Rule. They don't even put them on different graphics announcing that they are bringing in these two token black coaching candidates to fulfill the Rooney Rule. They put them on the same damn graphic. What a joke. But look, as far as Vrabel as a coach, I mean, I thought he was the best available coaching candidate. It makes sense why he'd want to go to New England. I don't blame him. They have a young quarterback he must believe in. They have cap space. They have a top 5 pick. He knows the ownership. He's comfortable there. It makes sense. It's just a bummer as a fan of a team in the AFC East that you got to now deal with Mike Vrabel twice a year because you know he's a good coach. And if Drake May's the real deal, they're going to be a good team. That's just how it goes. But man, what a joke how the Patriots completely circumvented the Rooney Rule with their hiring practices there. Ridiculous. I don't hear anyone calling it out either. Some other news with the coaching carousel. Pete Carroll has interviewed now for the Bears job and for the Raiders job. I don't understand why more teams are not talking with Pete Carroll. I understand that he is an older coach. I get it. But if you watch Pete Carroll moves around like he's in his early 50s. He's a culture changer. He will hire a good staff. He will restore order to any losing franchise, the Jets, that would consider hiring him. It is surprising to me that Pete Carroll is not getting requests from every team with an opening. Surprising to me. Same with John Gruden. Guy wants in so badly, got railroaded with the private emails being leaked in the first place, has owned it, apologized, I believe deserves a second chance, I believe is a good person. If you ever listen to John Gruden or talk to his players or coaches that have worked with him or know him. So the fact that he can't even get another interview with any team with an opening is crazy to me, especially when you're looking for offensive-minded coaches, and this guy's an offensive guy. So shocking to me that he's had 0 interviews and Pete Carroll's only had 2 so far. If you're a team with an opening, you should be talking to both. Let's be real. Now, as far as my New York Jets go, the New York Jets to this point have interviewed 13 general manager candidates so far. They have interviewed or will interview either 9 or 10 coaches. That's a lot. I have no problem, though, with the New York Jets wanting to talk to as many candidates as possible. I have no issue with that. I think it's smart. Talk to as many people as possible. Pick their brains. Learn about your organization. Maybe some of these coaches you're interviewing aren't to actually be head coaches, but to be a part of a coaching staff with a prospective head coach you end up hiring. I have no issue with the Jets interviewing a ton of candidates. None. My issue with the Jets is that if you're going to talk to Mike Locksley, the head coach of Maryland, who was 4-8 last year, has never won more than 8 games in any season, and was also 2-26 at New Mexico State in his first go-around as a head coach, why aren't you interviewing Pete Carroll and John Gruden? I'm not saying you got to hire Pete Carroll or John Gruden. But if you're the Jets and you're priding yourself on this wide-ranging search, leaving no stone unturned, then how do you not talk to two guys that are available that have Super Bowl rings on their finger and want to coach again? I'm not saying you got to hire Carroll, not saying you got to hire Gruden. But don't you got to talk to them? And look, if those guys said they're not interested and it hasn't gotten out there, I will come out and say, all right, they weren't interested in the job. You can't force them to be interested in the job. Fine. But I find it hard to believe that both Pete Carroll and John Gruden wouldn't meet with the Jets, wouldn't take an interview with them. So I'm putting it on the Jets until someone tells me otherwise that they turned the Jets down. How do you not talk to a guy with a Super Bowl ring and another guy with a Super Bowl ring? The Jets need a leader. The Jets need someone that can hold people accountable, that could change the stench of losing that is in that building in Florham Park, New Jersey. And you're not going to talk to John Gruden or Pete Carroll? Come on. You're not going to put in a request for Todd Monken, Cliff Kingsbury, Liam Cohen? If we're going to talk about some offensive-minded coaches that are out there? I have no issue with the Jets interviewing as many candidates as possible. Do your research. Do your due diligence. No issue. My issue is you can't tell me you have this wide-ranging search and it doesn't include Gruden or Carroll. And to this point, I've seen nothing about Monken, Kingsbury, or Liam Cohen. That's my frustration. I do think ultimately, though, Aaron Glenn's going to be the next head coach of the Jets. I personally want Brian Flores, but that's where I see it trending right now for this Jets team. Hit the like button if you're tuning in. You're watching the Jake Asman Football Show. If you're a Jake Asman fan, make sure you join my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jake Asman Show. You'll get access to our Discord. It's a great way to support the channel. If you're a fan of the NFL, a fan of football, or a fan of me, patreon.com/Jake Asman Show. Your super chats before we wrap. V-Man checks in. The Steelers have changed everything. Players, assistant coaches, coordinators, and the GM all have changed during the streak of postseason fertility. Tomlin remains the only constant, yet they still fail. All right, V-Man, if you want the Steelers to fire Mike Tomlin, you'd have half the league, if not more, trying to hire the guy. So if you think he's such a bad coach, why does every team want him? Maybe it's gotten stale in Pittsburgh. Maybe it's time for a change. If that happens, every team with an opening is going to be trying to get Mike Tomlin, and there might be some teams that would fire their current coach to bring in Tomlin to be their coach. To not have a losing season in 18 years, I don't care who you are, who you have, that is as impressive as it gets. Kyle Shanahan had a down year. Bill Belichick's last year in New England, what was his record? All these great coaches, they eventually have down years. They have a losing season. Tomlin never has. He's winning games with Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. The guy can coach. Maybe it got stale in Pittsburgh. It got stale, I guess, for Andy Reid in Philly, and Kansas City didn't bat an eye, hired him immediately, and once Andy Reid finally got a quarterback that he could go all the way with, look what he's done with Mahomes. Well, by the way, he was still winning previously with Donovan McNabb and Nick Foles and Michael Vick and Alex Smith. Today's NFL, you need a quarterback. Juan writes in, Tomlin ain't ready for NY media. Mike Tomlin can handle anyone. You think the New York media would scare Mike Tomlin? Please. Mike Tomlin would laugh. He'd laugh. He would be fine with the New York media. Give me a break. If Mike Tomlin can't handle the New York media, then nobody can. Because that's crazy to me. Crazy to me. Hit the like button if you're watching the Jake Asman Football Show right now. I want to thank everyone who tuned in. Let's enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully it's another classic like what we got last night to wrap up a dud of a weekend. At least we got one game. If you're betting on any of the games in the NFL playoffs, including the one tonight, make sure you use BetUS. Shout out to BetUS for being our presenting sponsor. Take advantage of that 150% sign-up bonus with your first deposit. My name is Jake Asman. This has been the Jake Asman Football Show. We're back later this week. Colt Thompson and I will preview the divisional round of the playoffs, give out our picks, and a whole lot more. I'll talk to you guys then. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the game later. And once again, enjoy the football, man. Can't say that enough. And thank you again to BetUS for being our presenting sponsor.